Welcome to the Ditch the Struggle podcast. I'm your host, Alana Rosso. I'm a graphic designer turned career and success coach who knew I could do better, but kept falling short of where I wanted to go. But after years of exploring personal and career development, business, money mindset, and energy work, I'm here to tell you that yes, you can move from stuck and defeated to empowered and confident. Ready to dive in? Awesome. Together, let's ditch the struggle. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I want to talk about being a creative and how frickin' hard that is as a career choice. To be a creative, I've gone into graphic design. To do something with your career as a creative person is really hard. And actually, I've been wanting to tell this story for a while. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. I'm going to trust that it comes out the right way today. And then there's a part of me that's like, what if when any of my clients hear this? I still really enjoy working with all my clients. But what I do want to say is that there was a point in my career that I deeply regretted becoming a graphic designer. I wished I had done things differently. And isn't that the case with most people? Not all, but a lot of us wish we had made different choices, done things differently, taken a different path. And I'm not someone who really dwells on regrets and mistakes because they inevitably get us to where we want to go. But that first 10, I would say even 15 years of my design career were pretty hard. Obviously, I was going through a lot of the anxiety, stressed out, but I was just working so insanely. And partly it's because some of my jobs were in agencies. So I've talked before about how agency life is not for me. It's way too cray-cray. I prefer to be in-house when it comes to design. You're just jumping through way too many hoops for the external client as opposed to working for your internal client. So I really hated agency work. And to this day, I really don't do it. I prefer working with internal brands or being in-house, as they say. Yeah, those first 10, 15 years of my career, like the jobs I had were so insane. I was working so hard, sometimes 16 hours a day in some of these studios, like literally getting there at 8 a.m. and leaving at midnight, days and days and weeks and months on end. If there was one thing I would do differently, I guess it would be not working as hard. But at the time, I thought I had to, pay my dues, which we all understand that. And you do need to gain experience and kind of get up to speed on everything. You don't know what you're doing at the beginning. Like I had no idea what I was doing and pretending I did. But there was also the sheer intensity of being a designer. And it was funny because I don't know how I came across this the other day searching something. I think I was looking up chill careers for something. I can't remember why I was doing this. But graphic designer came up and I was like, would I say that being a graphic designer is a chill career? Yes and no. I would say the way I did it for those 15 years at that beginning of my career, not chill. Is it chill for me more now that I work from home and I select my clients and I've gotten to that place and done a ton of work to get myself into that position? I would say yes. It's more chill because I get to really just stay quiet for a lot of the day. But I don't think it's a chill career. And here's why I ended up thinking that I regretted everything, because I was so burnt out. I was so tired. And it got to the point where I really was not enjoying it. And if I'm honest, I don't sit here on days where I'm not designing thinking, wow, I really miss designing. I wish I could do that. Or when I have large chunks of time away from designing, I'm not craving doing a logo. I'm not sitting here going, oh, I can't wait to hop into Illustrator and, spend hours creating paths. I'm not doing that. Now, is my brain completely wired for design? 100%. I looked back on my old sticker book that I made. I think I was 8 years old. I still have it. And it's so amazing to look at because I open it up and again, I was 8 years old when I did that. The first page is a massive hero sticker, like a huge sticker that takes over the whole page of a unicorn. Of course, like, I love that unicorns are back in, but it's a huge, like, hero image, and it's like a cover of a magazine. And then I flip through the pages, and every page is completely curated. The compositions are so well thought out. There's themes. So obviously, like, the glitter stars go on one page, the glitter hearts on another. Like, I'm not mixing and matching any of these. And then each sticker is precisely cut out around the little backing, right? I wasn't like a monster and just stuck the stickers straight onto the photo album. You used to use photo albums back then, like that you would get at the photography store, or like stores like they were called Blacks and things like that. So it's a billion years ago. And I look at that and I was like, yeah, that girl there was born to design. And I've mentioned this before. I would be in the grocery store. I would notice if like the cornflakes logo had changed like the slightest bit. I still am compelled to kern typography on shampoo bottles as I'm in the shower or whatever I see. I remember one time, maybe this is like 10 years ago, Starbucks launched a line of water, or they carried a line of bottled water called Ethos, Ethos. And you would see it in these bins every time you lined up for a coffee. And at the time, I remember I was really into the chai lattes back in the day. Now I have maybe one a month because I'm not so down with Starbucks. But I remember looking at these water bottles, and the kerning was so offensive and atrocious. I was like, how did this come to print? Like, how did they put this out there? So for those of you who are typography psychos, like some of us designers, kerning is the spacing between individual letters. So it's not between lines and between words, but actually between the letters. And when you do a logo, one of the most important things is how you're kerning and spacing the letters. That's going to kind of often be a difference between a really professional looking logo and a mediocre logo. So I remember looking at this type and being so upset every time I was in the Starbucks lineup, just looking at this logo. And you know what? Eventually they did change it. They updated it a couple years later. Same with the Calvin Klein logo that used to have atrocious kerning. Anyway, so my brain is wired to look at typography. If you come to my home office, you'll see I've got typography posters up. There is something innate within me that loves design, composition, color, all those things. But there's also a part of me that has felt almost kind of guilty that I'm not the one that's so passionate about designing that I want to do it 24/7. And what's hardest for me is that I think I was that person, especially in high school. I loved doing graphic design so much. I got to do a 3-year program within high school, and time would just fly. I have this one specific memory of being in class. It was my communication design class, having to do some advertisement. This was done by hand back then. It wasn't even with a computer. It was like this illustration exercise. And sitting down, and then somehow an hour and 10 or 15 minutes had gone by, and it was like an instantaneous thing. It was that weird time warp that, you have those when you're really in the flow for something. I've never forgotten that moment, and I've had it a few times since, but just the sheer joy of doing what I wanted to do and loving it so much. And then the joy of designing really took a turn as soon as I started getting paid to do it. And this is like a deep source of grief for me. I think I'm still working through it, and this is partly why I had to work through regretting, or almost regretting, that I did design as a career, because it became so much a part of my identity, and it was something that I was just doing all the time. And then it was like, so intense through school, and then go through like high school, college, do all the design stuff. Then I took a year off-ish, and then eventually started working my first job at the record label. And for something shifted within me when I started getting paid to do design. And, there's lots of interesting articles out there about never, like, not making a hobby a career. And there's something to that. And there was an amazing article I read. Someone had written it. I think it was for the CBC years ago. I've tried to find it. I can't find it. It was basically like, don't take every hobby you have and make it into a career, which is easy for us to do, or a lot of people want to do that. It's like, oh, they start making bracelets, and it's like, oh, you have to open up an Etsy store and like make a whole business and a brand out of it. It's like, no, you can just make bracelets for you and your friends, right? But for me, I lived and breathed design, and then I started doing it for a career, and I would say pretty quickly wasn't enjoying it. That's not to say I haven't had great moments, but again, that that first decade trying to find my feet and then not being paid well. I think that's a huge part of that piece that really made me angry and resentful is that I was being underpaid for a lot of what I was doing. It was incredibly hard work. And that first job, I've talked about this before, and I have a lot more to say on this story, but I made $22,000 a year. That was like a huge mistake how I ended up doing that, getting that crap salary. So I think that was $320 a week. That's not going to make you feel too good, like no matter what you do, whatever you're doing for a living, if you're not being paid well, it's going to really drag you down. And I would say that was part of what took me down. I was like, I can't believe how much work I'm doing and the value I'm bringing to the table and what I'm being paid. And then there is the piece about always having to design with immense pressure and on demand. So it's like you don't have a choice. You've got to come up with an idea and a good idea and execute it on any given day. You can't just be like, I don't feel like doing it today. You've got to really work under pressure. And graphic designers are incredible at that. How they can, like, I always joke that we are amazing at pulling something out of literally nothing. We just know how to take some random concept or some idea that the client has with no resources or little resources, no budget, and pull something together. So the way that graphic designers can problem solve and build something from almost nothing is amazing. And so, but doing that all the time, you're basically kind of doing creative with a gun to your head, so to speak. It's like, you've got to do this, you've got to execute it. And I had one friend I went to school with, like to art college with, and she got a few months into doing her career as a designer. And she's like, F this, I'm out. I'm not doing this. I'm not just going to sit there and have to create so much creative work on demand without having any time to think things through, without having any space to be creative. They hated it. So they quit design. I had another friend went to Concordia with me. I did my first year at Concordia, and she was a bit into her design career. And she's like, F this, I'm out. She's also out. She became a nurse. She was one of those people that had the ability to do creative work, like was an amazing creative and had the science brain. That wasn't me. So, but I will talk about how it's hard to kind of change your career when you're a designer and kind of the stigma attached to it. But I just found everything so hard and it's so exhausting and being on demand. And then I became to really resent, and this is so almost embarrassing to admit, or it feels kind of gross to admit, but I got to the point where I resented doing any kind of creative work unless I was getting paid. I could no longer do creative work just for the joy of it. And this is something I'm still actually struggling with. I found there's other creative outlets for me. Partly that's why you see me bake so much and you'll see me on Instagram putting all that stuff. I think that's my outlet and I don't have anything attached to it. I have great memories of baking as a kid. So I think it's just like a happy place for me. No one's, trying to pressure me into selling my cookies or my whatever I'm making. It's just a pure outlet for me. But when I started doing my creative career and I was attaching my value to what I was able to output as a creative, I no longer wanted to do any creative work or anything creative unless someone was paying me to do it. And that sounds really weird. Maybe it doesn't sound weird. Maybe other creative people feel this, but there's not everyone values creative work, right? Not everyone values anything that anyone does. Like universally, there's nothing really valued across the table except, brain surgeons and things like that. So when I found people that, would pay me for my work, that was important to me and it validated the value of the creative process. And so I just kind of felt that if I did anything for free, it was invalidating the process. It's hard to explain, but I will say that something really shifted for me once I started doing design no longer in school and then doing it as a career. Now in school, it's different because what are you trying to achieve? You're trying to achieve, good grades, solid marks, maybe figure out your style and kind of get just feel good about what you're creating. And there's a very deep personal satisfaction that I think comes out of it. I think a lot of that personal satisfaction gets stripped away when you're doing it as a career because, of course, you have to do it for clients. So how many times do you have to compromise as a designer? And you get used to it, but it's like, you have this vision, you start off with this amazing concept, it's beautiful, you love it, and then it gets watered down, it gets pulled apart, it gets like spat on by clients sometimes. And then suddenly you end up with this really hideous shell of a concept that, you feel deeply sad about. And it's part of it, and it is important to kind of just learn that that's going to happen. When you're early in your career, it feels very devastating, and then you get over it. Now, I honestly don't care less, and because partly is that my original concepts, if they don't end up the way I want, those are the ones I'm showing to people or putting in my portfolio. You can do that. You can showcase how you actually, the ideal version of what you want it to be. And sometimes it's kind of fun to be like, well, this is what I wanted, but this is actually what went to market. So sometimes I'm really transparent about that too, which is kind of a good tip for you guys. If you are a designer, not to get too upset if what you didn't make it to the world. You can hang on to it. It still exists. And then you can showcase it in different ways. So that's just, oh man, you got to learn. You really develop a thick skin as a designer. And I think that's one thing that I absolutely love about having chosen this, because this is the harder path. Being a creative is more difficult. It is way more difficult to do this than to be like someone who goes straight into marketing or something a little bit more black and white. And I'm not trying to offend people, although I don't really care if you're offended by me saying this. This is what I think. I think that it is a harder path to do a creative role for a living. It's more precarious. There's more emotions involved. And to be just constantly coming up with new ideas and executing them all the time, pulling literally stuff from the ether, as opposed to just working with some numbers or spreadsheets or pulling data that already exists. Like, think about it. Designers are pulling stuff from like nowhere. Yeah, you're getting inspiration from places, but you're relying on something deep within yourself to come up with something beautiful that communicates well, that tells a story, that is unique. That's always what we're trying to do, is create something different. So it's not easy. And so there was this phase where I was just like, I can't believe I've done this for a career, because I feel like it's ruined my love of creativity, and I no longer want to do things just for fun. That's tough to actually feel that when you have loved doing creative things for your whole life. I was that kid. I used to sit in my basement, this like sad little basement we had in the house I grew up in. It's funny, I never thought of it as sad, but when I saw it as an adult, I was like, oh, this is kind of like almost creepy. But I sat there with like all of my art supplies and my Crayola caddy of 64 crayons. Yes, it had the sharpener. I thought it was the best thing in the world. And I just lived this life where I was just making things all the time. And I was just recently on a walk with one of my old bosses. And she's like, don't you remember how we used to just make stuff as kids, just like make cool things? It's like, yeah, I do remember that. And like, I don't know how to get back to that feeling. And I want to connect back to that version of myself. Now, as a coach, if I was talking to someone through this, I would think about baby steps that person could take to get back to that creative version of themselves. And so I could, logically start thinking of things. Like, I do see myself kind of picking up a paintbrush again. I haven't picked up a paintbrush other than painting parts of my house in literally decades. But I'm not there yet. And that's okay, because I feel like I have a few other priorities, and including, doing this podcast and a couple other things I want to work on. So, but there is a deep sadness within me that mourns that creative person that used to be, who is no longer, she just doesn't feel like she's close to me anymore. It's just like, and yeah, I think some other creatives will understand what I'm talking about. So I built this career, done some creative work. So now, how did I come to peace? And I did come to major peace with this decision that I made. I feel like it was only maybe about 12 years ago. So maybe, yeah, I feel like about 12 years ago. And I remember being in the house and having this just thought drop into me, which happens to me quite often. And it was this thought and feeling that I had done the right thing becoming a designer, because had I not become a designer and taken the creative route and become a person who made their living through creativity, I would have deeply regretted it because that was the harder path. And if I had gone into, like, there was a part of me that just wanted to go into marketing and business. If I had done that, that would have been the easier route. And if I had done that, I would have always regretted, ironically, not doing the creative route, not taking the creative path, not becoming a designer, because that was harder. And I know myself now that I don't ever want to feel that I took a shortcut or took the easy route for the sake of just being easy. And it would have been the easier route. Like I was very interested in just kind of business and marketing. I still am. I could have done a non-creative career. And I know some creatives can't say that and feel that genuinely, but I actually feel like I could have done like ran a retail store, like, or built a brand and a store, or just done marketing, or just done something different. And I think I would have been okay. And I think I would have been good at it because shockingly, not all graphic designers are just talented at design and creativity. We can do other things. I want to talk about that in a second. But yeah, I had this moment. I was like, oh my God, if I had actually not followed this career path of design, which I mean, I had very, very, very clear talents in this area, and I did really enjoy it back in the day. If I hadn't have gone down that path and like really gone down it, not just like touched that path a little bit and tried it, but dug my heels into it and become a designer and kind of moved around and built a career that way, I would have always regretted. I would have regretted that more than becoming a designer and regretting doing that. So either way, I feel like I would have had regrets or questioned my decision. And that's totally normal. How can you not make decisions and not question whether maybe they were right or wrong? But when I had this feeling and this thought drop into me and this realization, I guess, I felt a tremendous sense of peace and it kind of shifted things overnight. And again, I don't know why this came to me at this particular point in my life. How this just kind of clicked into place, but I was like, oh my gosh, if I had actually not pursued my obvious talents and tried to make a career out of it and make a living out of it, I would have regretted that more than had I just gone into some kind of business path and abandoned my creative roots. Now, maybe, who knows, I would have gone and just, gone into some kind of business role and then loved being creative still and was painting at night and being super creative and all of those things that I'm not doing now because I'm really not doing much creative work outside of what I do for some of my clients. Maybe that would have worked out. Maybe I would have been amazing. But I just kind of feel like I would have been like, oh, I wish I had known if I could have done this as a career because, as I said, it is the harder path. And I think we've established that I like to take hard routes and I like to do things that are challenging. And it is incredibly challenging to embrace being a designer. And now I really, going into it now, I feel for a lot of designers, I feel like it's so much more difficult than it would have been for me back in the day. There was so much work available to me. Now things are really kind of cray-cray out there. And of course, I'm not even going to go into the conversation about AI because I don't even know what I can bring to the table, but there's a lot going on, right? But what I do want to say is that, like, if you have taken a career path that is in the creative world, whether it's design, writing, any of that, photography, you have taken the harder path. And I think that means you have more courage. That's my thoughts. That I think that it means that you are pretty brave and have some guts that other people don't have. And, I was really fortunate in that my parents, they encouraged me, or they were kind of neutral, I guess, about doing a creative career. My dad was really creative. So most of my design talent, you can see, it comes from my dad. We have very similar aesthetic, flat color, lines, polka dots, like stripes, like very like bold and that way. I get a lot of my creativity and talents from him. So they both appreciated it. They understood. My mom had a huge appreciation for the arts, and she herself loved to write poetry. So I was really fortunate. I didn't have those parents that were like, you can't do this, you're never going to make a living, blah, blah, blah. I mean, to this day, they don't know what I did for a living. Like they're gone now, but I don't think they really knew what becoming a graphic designer meant, what I was doing every day. I think they think I just made flyers, maybe an advertisement here and there, but they didn't really know what it meant. And that's fine. In a way, I just had that carte blanche to do whatever I wanted with my career. If I had changed paths and decided to ditch design, I think they would have been fine with that too. I don't think they would have had an opinion either way, as long as, I was okay, quote unquote, right? But yeah, listen, it takes much more courage to become a designer, do a creative path, and then it can also take a lot of courage to leave that career or to make a change. I think it's a lot harder for someone who's like boxed into a career that's creative, like a designer, and like move out of that than maybe someone who's going the opposite direction. Now, I don't know. That might be just my perception. But one thing that I do see is that designers and creatives really get pigeonholed and boxed into, oh, this is clearly your talent. This is the type of person you are. It's such a specific niche skill, and we love that you have it, that it makes it harder to leave that. Now, my transition going into coaching and kind of getting into that world did feel difficult. It was like, I think people are just seeing me as someone who can, create a logo, to simplify things. Are they going to see me as someone who can talk about other careers and give thoughts on that and help inspire them to make different decisions? Are they going to be able to see me that way? Because the truth is, this is just the design part, the creativity part. It is a part of me, but it's just one part. And for some reason, especially with designers, you just get really boxed in. And I see it in corporations because I was just having this conversation with another designer literally yesterday who's thinking about doing some career changes. And, I think it's hard to watch when you're working in a corporation and people in all the other departments, like let's say PR, marketing, accounts, finance, all those things, those people seem to just move around in all different departments. It's like, oh, I'm going to move from PR to accounts, and I'm going to go from here to here and here. And there's way more room for lateral movements and changes in departments. But when you're the designer in the company or part of the design team, no one wants you to move. It's like, who's going to do Photoshop? Who's going to retouch images? Who's going to make the logo? Who's going to make things pretty, right? It's like, it's the designer. No one wants you to move. You're not encouraged in the corporate culture to like change. And you just are seen as the creative one. And, that you don't have a brain that does anything else, that your brain doesn't do math, that your brain doesn't do spreadsheets, all these things. Maybe some designers are like that, but you don't actually get to be a really great designer and have a solid career unless you're good at quite a few different things other than just using the software. Like, that's one part of it. And this just can be like so hard to feel that you can't move around as a creative. So I think you do have to make bigger strides. That can mean getting additional training and really making big shifts. And often, I think it means changing companies so that you can reinvent yourself as a new person at a different company and a different role. If you want to leave that creative career behind or change, like I just think that the transition going from designer or any other creative to another can be challenging. I felt it for sure. I sometimes wondered when I would be coaching, let's say, I'll never forget the story, but coaching a data analyst, I was like, are they going to take what I'm saying seriously because I have this creative background? Like, are they thinking that I'm just capable of understanding, the creative person, which is, again, not true. A great coach really can learn to coach anybody. It doesn't matter what they do. But there's the stigma of how we're perceived, and then there's the internal identity that we have of ourselves, and moving away from that can be challenging. But you can do it. So if you are in a creative career and you want to shift from it, I do wish I had shifted into coaching earlier. I wish I hadn't waited so long. Even though it was not something I wanted to do necessarily full time, I would have liked to have acquired those skills earlier. I honestly think going to coaching school is incredible for anybody because you just learn so much, not only about yourself, but how to communicate with others. It's just really helpful. I just love that I got that training and invested in that. But I'm really sympathetic to how hard it is to have a creative career, how demanding it is, and how hard it can be if you do want to make a shift and move out of it. It's not necessarily worth regretting it if you've done it, because as you know, we learn from all of these experiences. I would not take back any of my experiences because what would I talk about on this podcast? It's just, I got too many crazy stories and I keep remembering all these stories I haven't mentioned yet. So there's some good ones to come, some crazy job stories to come. But yeah, I want to affirm that you have taken the harder path. Hopefully it's been worth it for you. And it takes guts to be a designer. It takes guts to be a creative. And I think the guts that you create or the guts that you build through taking that path can take you in other directions with a lot of like ease and grace. I think you just learn so much about adaptability, working under pressure. And so don't let yourself define your own self as to what you can and can't do. And try not to let others define what you can and can't do because they're going to want to put you in this box that you're just this creative designer. And you get to make the choices to whether you want to break out of that. You get to recognize your other talents, what you can bring to the table, and you can dig into those, especially as you go further in your career. Like it is normal now to get to be 10, 15 years into your career and wonder if you want to do something different. No one's sticking to the same thing forever and ever. I certainly haven't. You're not seeing it now. Definitely millennials and below, all those generations, they're treating things so differently. And I love that it's kind of a permission slip to do whatever you want. But I did want to share that I did kind of regret or almost completely regret being a designer. But I don't know if I would do it differently at this point. And the only thing I would say is that I would have set more boundaries in the workplaces that I worked. Would it have worked? Probably not. Probably would have lost my job or quit or got fired or something like that. We talk so much about setting boundaries at work. It doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. That's for sure. I think it sounds really nice on LinkedIn in a post to say that we need to set boundaries at work. Doesn't always work, but we'll dive more into that again. But I just want to recognize the creative people out there that have done the harder thing. I think we're going to give ourselves a gold star today. I'm giving myself a gold star. And to be clear, I do enjoy some of my work sometimes, but it is also kind of a vocation for me. I don't know if we use that word anymore, but vocation is kind of just like kind of like skilled labor. And some days that's just what it is for me. I'm just chopping wood, as my friend Peter would say. I'm just chopping the wood, putting it out there, doing what I need to do. And I am really, really happy, though, that I have built a career where I can now kind of do it from home and I'm selective about my clients. So that is a huge, huge win. That is one way to make your creative career much more satisfying and much more chill, because apparently graphic designers are super chill and it's a chill career, right? So anyway, that's my creative rant for today. Take care, guys. We're going to chat soon. Thank you for joining me today on Ditch the Struggle. You showing up here means so, so much to me. To dig deeper into the topics discussed today and to learn about my work, visit alanarosa.com. And don't forget to download your free resources while you're there. And if this episode resonated with you, please share with others who also want to ditch the struggle. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast, leave a rating and a review, and let me know what you'd like to see more of on this podcast. And before I go, I want to leave you with my 3 favorite ways to ditch the struggle. Be your own best advocate, take baby steps for the win, and forget about a linear career path. It's overrated and you are doing just fine. See you next time.